Welcome to this session looking at Paper 1, Section A. I'm going to look at this Othello extract, which is Act 3, Scene 3. It's a key moment where Desdemona is handing Othello off. She's chastising him. She's trying to get him to reinstate Cassio in his role. So before I read it through, I'm going to look at my quick wins, the quick things I know to look at before I even really fully read the text. I know I can sort of talk about these. So I can identify my first and last lines very easily. So my first line here would be Othello, prithee no more, let him come when he will, I will deny thee nothing. What's interesting here is that Othello speaks at the start and he's in a kind of a subordinate position. So he's had a kind of enough, no more, because he's being nagged by Desdemona. I will deny thee nothing. He kind of completely capitulates to her. So he seems under kind of emotional pressure here, doesn't he? If we look at the last lines, again, interesting. He talks about some horrible conceit. If thou dost love me, show me thy thought. A conceit is another word for a thought here. So, show me your horrible thought. If you love me, tell me what you're thinking. That's what he's saying to Iago. Again, we see some emotional turmoil in Othello. So Othello begins and ends this scene, this extract, in emotional conflict. First of all with Desdemona, secondly with Iago. In that sense, with two people who in some sense are supposed to love him. One of whom is deceiving him, and in some sense actually I guess Desdemona was also technically deceiving him. She's not really upset with him. She just wants to make him feel bad so that he gives Cassio his job back. It was interesting, nonetheless, that Othello is under emotional pressure in this extract, and that helps us see, obviously, his state in this at this point in terms of his tragic condition. So, I guess we had the first and last lines, haven't we? First and last lines, we have Othello. Okay, other quick wins for us here. Who speaks most? Okay, who speaks most? Now, if we look at this, I think we can probably determine that, looking at it, I guess Desdemona, interestingly, probably speaks a little bit more at the beginning than Othello does. So up to the point where she exits, if you look at it, she exits here. We'll look at it in a second. Desdemona speaks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 10 lines, 11 lines. Othello is speaking only 1, 2, 3 lines. Notice how Desdemona overwhelms him at this point. So Othello is very passive, and he's definitely under Desdemona's kind of control and influence, and he's a bit disturbed by this. As the passage goes on, though, Othello speaks, obviously, if he's spoken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, 7 lines, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So overall, he speaks the most, doesn't he? So it might be interesting to talk about in the first part, to start. Desdemona speaks more. Then Othello speaks more. Okay, and I guess Othello speaking more obviously about his status and his position. So that's a minor point we can make. But let's look at what he does say. So he starts off obviously by talking about, again, his emotional pain, and he ends, again, his long bit of speech is also to do with his emotional pain. So one of the key things to say is not only that he speaks the most, but that what is represented on stage in terms of words is in majority is to do with emotional chaos and conflict and confusion. And that's a really important thing, isn't it? If we also look at, after Desdemona's exit, look at the number of times he speaks. So he speaks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times. How many times does Iago speak then? Iago speaks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times. So it's very close. And it's a really interesting thing to say. Although Iago has fewer lines, he speaks nearly as frequently as Othello when they're alone on stage together. jostling with power, jostling with kind of control, manipulating, echoing his words, obviously is what he does in the scene, isn't he? But there's a sense in which Iago also speaks as nearly as frequently as Othello once Desdemona is exited, and that's an important part of his manipulation, isn't it? An important part of him gaining control over Othello's mind, not letting him be, basically, I guess. So we've got first and last lines, who speaks most, who speaks least. Other key things, setting. What is the setting of this scenario? Well, it is obviously Cyprus, isn't it? But importantly in Cyprus, the most important thing, it's inside the castle. And in fact, in a garden. And inside the castle, seemingly inside protection and security. They're aware of the external threat, the Turks, but they're unaware of the internal threat represented by Iago. The garden should be a place of peace and tranquility and calm and love. Actually, we see domestic trouble between the couple. There's an argument. And we also see the beginning of Iago's, what we call the temptation scene. Iago's tempting Othello into feeling jealousy over Cassio and Desdemona's relationship, or supposed relationship. So the garden's very important in a sense because it exposes, it magnifies in contrast our expectations about gardens and the peace and the calm, the leisure, with actually the feelings which Othello is experiencing. So we can see that his decline, we can see the way in which Iago is manipulating and working on Othello, or in which, particularly in the play, that Othello is now becoming increasingly agitated, turning away from his very calm demeanour. I mean, he's very, very calm early on in Acts 1, isn't he? Very calm and in control, not really given to strong emotion, but he is the complete opposite. And of course then, my other quick win is dramatic irony. I know that virtually every scene of the play contains some element of dramatic irony. Nearly every scene you can find it somewhere. Well, here, of course, Desdemona. If I just put dramatic irony here. Desdemona very clearly does not really understand actually how she's being manipulated. She's part of the plan, okay? Because Iago has got Cassio to beg Desdemona. Desdemona is then begging Othello to get his job back, and that's all part of Cassio. That's all part of Iago's plot to get Othello jealous, because Desdemona is banging on about Cassio all the time, getting angry about Cassio. It seems like she's very, very fond of him. And then, of course, there's dramatic irony that Othello doesn't really kind of know what Iago's plan is like, and it comes out very strongly at the end here, doesn't it? There's some horrible conceit, some horrible thought in your mind. It's just that Othello doesn't know what that thought is. He thinks the horrible thought is that Desdemona and Cassio are having a relationship. He doesn't know the horrible thought is that Iago wants to destroy Othello and his life for not promoting him, and potentially for having slept with Emilia. Okay, those are our quick wins. When I go sort of sequentially through the text and have a little look at what it means. Prithee no more, let him come when he will, I'll deny nothing. I'll give you everything you want, says Othello. And he repeats this actually twice, doesn't he? I'll deny thee nothing. He repeats it twice. So he'll give Desdemona anything she wants. It's completely under the thumb. What's interesting, though, to notice that Desdemona is not really happy with him saying, I'll give you everything. And she says, why? This is not a boon. 'Tis as I should entreat you, wear your gloves, or feed on nourishing dishes, or keep you warm, or suit you to do a peculiar profit to your own person. Nay, when I have a suit wherein I mean to touch your love indeed, it shall be full of poise and difficult weight and fearful to be granted. Notice an entire sentence. Okay, that whole bit chunk of text. Desdemona is like not even pausing. She's laying into him with her anger. She's basically saying, you're treating me like I'm nagging you, like I'm telling you to wear your gloves or keep warm. You're treating me like I'm your mum, saying to wear your coat when you go outside in the cold. And she says, actually, you need to be fearful, okay, and consider what I'm telling you. Like, you should think about it deeply. Othello repeats, I'll give you anything you want. When I do beseech thee, grant me this, to leave me but a little bite to myself. Just please leave me alone. He's begging here, isn't he? So in this dialogue between them, there's of course that Iago and Emilia are also on the stage at this point, silent. This dialogue between them, we're seeing this kind of disagreement, aren't we? The tone from Desdemona is definitely one of anger. It's an angry tone here, especially. So angry, frustrated tone. Othello is full of capitulation, giving in. Shall I deny you? No, farewell, my lord. She's very, very curt. Farewell, my Desdemona. I'll come to thee straight. I'll come to you straight away. Whereas Othello is very, very devoted, in his sense, very kind of sweet, Desdemona is very cold and curt. And look at the line here. Emilia, come. Very short sentences, be simple sentences. Be as your fancies teach you. Whatever you be, I am obedient. So although you're not doing the right thing, I'm going to be the right thing. I'm going to leave because you've asked me to. And then she exits. And I guess the key dramatic method here that we're going to look at is that exit. So at this point, there is a physical separation on stage. Okay, physical separation of Othello and Desdemona. We're close and now moving apart. And that is a symbol, of course, for the start of their domestic tragedy. This is all part of Iago's plan, and it's probably working perfectly for him, isn't it? Where we start to see that split in their relationship, the fractures at the beginning point of that. She's basically storming off after being really curt and sharp to him, which is really quite critical. Now, what's important, of course, is Othello's response. I guess, notice the exclamations. So the volume might be increased at this point. It might be a case that he's sort of screaming or shouting or definitely increasing his feeling, showing his passion with the volume of his voice. And despite the hyperbole, I mean, the reaction is extremely melodramatic. Let's think about this. Basically, his wife has slightly told him off for not doing what she wants, and his response is to sort of scream, "Excellent wretch! Perdition catch my soul, but I do love thee, and when I love thee not, chaos has come again." Well, that's a really extreme reaction to her basically saying, "I'm not happy with you, please employ this guy again." This is an extreme reaction. We have some obviously interesting language use here. Excellent wretch. There's a little oxymoron there. She's both excellent, beautiful, and a wretch, terrible. Or is she talking about his own feelings? It could be both. Perdition is destruction. Things like destruction catching his soul, but I do love thee. Here, in terms of dramatic method, I guess we can think about the exclamations as dramatic pauses. But I do love thee. And when I love thee not, chaos has come again. And that pause is interesting, isn't it? Because it introduces these two contrary thoughts. For the first time in the play, this is a crucial thing for its significance. The first time in the play, Othello contemplates love or expresses that he might not love Desdemona, or that his feelings for Desdemona are in conflict. And he uses the word chaos. We have obviously a very direct sense in which his emotions are in flight, in flux, and he's in a deep sort of despair and confusion. So there's literal chaos emotionally and mentally for Othello at this point. What's important in terms of staging of this, I imagine, is that in terms of the dramatic method, Othello is almost treating this as if he's on his own. He's sort of saying this out loud. "Excellent wretch, perdition catch my soul, I love thee when I love thee not, chaos is coming again." He's exploding with emotion, and he doesn't seem to realise that Iago is there somewhere behind him or around him. At this point, Iago is there, and he speaks to him, doesn't he? "My noble lord, my noble lord." And he's reminding Othello that he should be noble. He shouldn't be speaking in this overly exaggerated emotional way. It might be the case that Iago has been somewhat distant from Othello, because Othello was close next to Desdemona, because Iago wouldn't be standing next to him whilst he's talking to Desdemona, he'd be standing off a bit as a servant. And that now maybe, whilst Othello is dealing with all of his emotions, we can say in some productions, perhaps, is my way to phrase it in the exam, in some productions, Iago might move from a point that's further away, closer. And that moving closer would be part of the proxemics, that actually is coming in for the kill, coming in to control and manipulate and shape how Othello is thinking. I mean, up to this point then he's watching silently and waiting for his move to make his move. What's important, of course, is that actually it seems to be that Iago startles him, he's cut off. "My noble lord, what dost thou say, Iago?" Othello seems to realise that Iago is there, and he cuts Iago off. That little detail is important, because again, Othello is so now obsessed and overwhelmed with his feelings for Desdemona that he is sort of confused about what's around him even. And that's perhaps showing partly his hamartia, isn't it? That love is something overwhelming him, love is something controlling him. He's so unaware of his environment and the people near to him. I guess what we have now, importantly, is a duologue. Okay, with Desdemona and Emilia's exit, we have Iago alone on stage with Othello. And that's a part of a pattern in the play. When these duologues with Iago and other characters happen, Iago's always manipulating them. There's never a moment, I don't think, where Iago's on stage alone with one other character that is not in some way insidiously trying to disturb their mind, or trick them, or trap them, or deceive them in some sense. And it's exactly what we have here. It's part of a pattern in the play. And I guess the importance of the duologue is that there are no other characters that can intervene. There's not Montano here saying, "Hang on a minute, Iago, I don't think Cassio is quite like that, although he's pretty bad, he's not like that." Or no other character is there on stage to say, I don't think that's quite right. You might want to look at Cassio differently. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. So it enables Iago to be alone on stage, to manipulate the thoughts and feelings of others, effectively to shape their perceptions. And that's importantly what's going on here. He's shaping the perceptions of Othello. So let's continue then. So what does he say? My noble lord, did Marco Cassio, when you wooed my lady, know of your love? Notice, importantly as a dramatic method, Iago initiates conversation. He takes charge, and a very specific conversation to explore Cassio as a character and his motivations and his roles in his role in the play. That's a very deliberate move, okay? Importantly from Iago here in this scene. And if we continue on the other side, let's read it through. He did from first to last, why dost thou ask? But for a satisfaction of my thought. No further harm. Why have they thought? Iago, I did not think he had been acquainted with her. Oh yes, much as very oft. Indeed, aye, indeed. Sayest thou aught in that? Is he not honest? Honest, my lord? Honest, aye, honest. My lord, for what I know, what dost thou think? Think, my lord? Think, my lord, by heaven he echoes me. As if there were some monster in his thought too hideous to be shown. Thou dost mean something. I heard thee say even now, thou likest not that. When Cassio left my wife, what didst not like? And when I told thee he was of my counsel, my whole course of wooing, thou criedst indeed, and didst contract and purse thy brow together, as if thou then hadst shut up in thy brain some horrible conceit. If thou dost love me, show me thy thought. So he's obviously very carefully hinting at Iago here, that there are problems with Cassio. And he does it very subtly, of course. He drops in words like, I'm only doing it satisfying my thought, no further harm. Structurally, of course, he ends that word, that line with the word harm. Of course, he wants Othello to think there is harm at stake here, something is going to be hurting him. And I guess in terms of dramatically, there's this echoing, a repetition between them, isn't there? Thought, thought, think, indeed, 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 honest, 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 think, think, think. Those repetitions, that's partly on the stage, is almost comedic potential. It's part of that clownish aspect of Iago, where he's sort of playing with Othello here, isn't he? And that's one way to think about the nature of this dialogue. And I guess, importantly, is, of course, just the rapid nature of this. There's rapid speech here, isn't there? Between the two of them, of one or two lines. Sometimes we might call this sticker mythia. There is a comic element to it that's almost painful to watch. It's part of the dramatic irony that we know what Iago is planning to do. We can see how now he's manipulating Othello rapidly, really quickly, into getting unsettled and upset. And of course, importantly, Othello has already picked up on Iago's points. So he knows there's something suspicious going on. He uses this language of monster, which is the motif. He talks about, thou likest not that. That's from an earlier scene when Iago had seen, Othello and Iago had just seen Cassio just leaving Desdemona. He remembers it, and Othello has not forgotten it. And then we get an implied stage direction. This is a key dramatic method here, an implied stage direction, that Iago's facial expressions. Okay? It's got a reference to facial expression here. Facial expression. Contract and purse thy brow. So where his eyebrows are, his forehead. He's contracting it, he's pushing it in, and he's pursing it, he's pushing it out. So he's frowning. Basically, Iago's been frowning. Okay? So he's using his facial expressions to convey that there's something suspicious or not right. And that's important for us, because we see how Iago is a master manipulator through the kind of clownish rapidity of his speech and echoing the stichomythia here to the facial expressions. So, if we look at it then, I think we might talk about other things there that might be relevant. I guess at the end, Othello is struggling to maintain iambic pentameter. It's not quite there. If you look at it, it's slightly off. So again, that he's perhaps now struggling to sustain his nobility, struggling to maintain his composure. Remember, this calm figure from Act 1 is now no longer calm. He's disturbed psychologically, emotionally, mentally, isn't he? I think we've said perhaps that obviously Iago initiates the topic. And I guess obviously, I think that kind of covers most of it. Potentially, we might imagine that Othello is getting we might imagine, or in some productions you would see Othello getting increasingly angry. Like his tone of voice at the start of the conversation is going to be quite calm. He's kind of explaining things to him. So at the beginning here, he's going to say, yeah, he did from first to last. Why are you asking? Why have they thought? And then it kind of build up, isn't it? You can see that in the exclamations. Okay, indeed, honest. Okay, and so on. Think, my lord. Yeah, and he's getting really angry, and those exclamations might show an increase in volume and irritation as Othello gets sucked into Iago's plot here. So in terms of thinking about dramatic method, tragic aspects, we start off presumably with the exploration of Desdemona and Othello. We have that domestic tragedy starting here. We have emotional chaos in Othello. We then have Iago as a tragic villain, and Othello as a tragic victim or hero in some sense, undergoing this downfall, gradually being manipulated, gradually falling into jealousy and confusion and emotional turmoil. There's quite a lot here to look at, and it's a really key scene. But I'm going to pause there. I think we've covered a good number of dramatic methods and a good number of tragic aspects.